Hi, my name is Rachel, and today we're talking about another author's behaving badly. Today's author is Brandi Szeker. Brandi is the self-published author of the Pawn and the Puppet series, which currently has 3 books out, and a 4th is coming out. Somehow they have all been released within less than a year, which is ridiculous. If you're a regular viewer of mine, sorry, I have a headache today, so this is not my usual. I have been dealing with a migraine on and off for 3 days now, and I woke up this morning to somebody messaging me saying that they would sue me if I did a video on them, so that was fun. My head really hurts, so I'm not at my usual. I'm also wearing a shit ton more makeup than I normally wear, and my face feels very heavy. By the way, my patrons pick my makeup, and they requested Emo Sunset, so this is my take on that. You're welcome. Okay, we're getting into this. Also, this is not going to be a very happy video because this book was traumatizing for me. This is way too bright. This is hurting my face. Hopefully y'all can see me. I'll try to turn up the brightness if not, but this is not doing any favors for my migraine right now. If you are a regular viewer of mine, you will recall that last year Brandi Szeker got a lot of flack for her debut book, The Pawn and the Puppet, and I did read and review that for the series I do called Did It Deserve 1 Star, because it got 1 star bombed on Goodreads, so I read it and did a video deciding from a craft perspective whether or not it deserved it, and I believe that it did. In fact, it was my worst read of last year, and I read a lot of bad things last year. The reason that I'm doing an author's behaving badly instead of continuing on with the other books in the series, I did get the sequel and I kept meaning to start it, and then I couldn't do it because the first book fucked me up so bad from a mental health perspective. I didn't realize how bad it was until like a month and a half later, I'd say, when I noticed that my OCD, my compulsions to tap were worse, my anxious thoughts were worse, my ED was really bad over that time period. It put me in a really bad place, and I thought it was like a funk that I would be able to throw off eventually. I thought that I would eventually stop feeling so anxious about picking up the book, and I never did. There are now 3 sequels out with a 3rd on the way, as I said, a 4th book in the series, because Brandi tends to care about quantity over quality, and if that weren't true, in my estimation, she would not have published the first book as is, let alone churn out a sequel just months later. It just seems like it's not really a series that has been something that the author has taken the time to hone their craft at, and instead is just a cash grab. Anyway, I wasn't planning on doing this video, but then somebody posted something else about Brandi, and it was on TikTok, and in the screenshot I saw this, which is a picture of her talking about her merch, which is a screenshot of like her Facebook post talking about her merch, and I realized that she named a edible merch item after the eating disorder in her book, and I sort of lost it. I had a pretty negative reaction to that, and I wanted to speak out about that, but I figured let's just compile all of this into one video and not read the sequels ever. Let's just do that. So here we are, author behaving badly, Brandi Szeker. I'm going to try to be as chill as I can delivering all of this information. In spite of the fact that this book in particular did immense harm to me mentally, I realized that Brandi doesn't care about that, most likely, and this video probably won't reach her. My hope, though, is that it will reach people who plan to publish, and that they will not do all of these things. Avoid making these kinds of harmful decisions about the books and the merch and the way that they go about apologizing. Just hopefully this can be avoided in the future. As well as I want to talk about what happens when you romanticize mental illness in your books and even admit that you're romanticizing it. Which reminds me that before I even start, I need to add a trigger warning list to this video. So trigger warning for transphobia, harmful OCD representation by way of child abuse, child death, child murder, pedophilia, postnatal depression, intrusive thoughts, discussion of ED and bad ED rep in books, and harmful depictions and inaccurate information surrounding dissociative identity disorder. Hello, it is I editing trash can Rachel, as I call myself. I have to say before I continue, thank you for being a friend to my Therapy Bills patrons, and those are Amanda, Ashley, Carlin, Claire, Des, Eric, Harley, Jack and Jill, John, Kate B, Kelly, Quinn, Lee, Lex, Molly, Rain, SJ, Samar, Scarlett, Sierra, Tori, and Zachary. Thank you all so much
for being a friend.
So Brandi Szeker is a fairly popular TikTok author. As I said, her first book, her debut book, self-published book, came out last year on April 1st, 2022, and it was called The Pawn and the Puppet. Brandi said that she tried to get traditionally published and was rejected. This makes sense to me. I can't see a agent picking this up as it's pretty poor quality. I don't think that it would be a valuable book to work on, so I can understand why it did not get picked up. Then again, Caraval somehow managed to get published. There's a lot of bad books out there that did get picked up, so what do I know? I'm going to tell you about the harmful content within the book and then Brandi's subsequent actions. So the book started out with this list of trigger warnings and a note about dissociative identity disorder. The list of trigger warnings did not include everything that should have been included, including child murder and child sexual assault. And the note about dissociative identity disorder was kind of ridiculous. Because it was basically just like, I'm going to make inaccurate rep. Ta-da! Main character, Skylena, is a 19-year-old living in a dystopian society. This is not a fantasy, despite, for some reason, Brandi getting really excited about being number 2 on Barnes & Noble's list just behind Sarah J. Maas, who actually does write fantasy books. Brandi was like, I'm number 2 in fantasy! And I'm like, but why? You didn't write a fantasy, you wrote a dystopian. There's nothing fantasy about this. Like, why don't you care about accuracy? You just care about winning and money. This dystopian society, the country is called Dementia, and there are 2 parts of the government, Demeknef and Surviva. And Surviva is the part in charge of like medical stuff, and they throw everybody in an asylum because that's what we love to see, is asylums getting romanticized. So Surviva runs the asylum in the book, and that's where our main character Skylena goes to work after her twin sister commits suicide, I think. Skylena starts to help the patients. One such patient is patient 13, whose name is Dessen, who is the love interest, and he has dissociative identity disorder. Brandi wrote this character as the love interest, fully aware that this is inaccurate representation of dissociative identity disorder, and said in that note at the beginning that she did this on purpose because this was how society views dissociative identity disorder. And it's like, yeah, why would you romanticize a stereotype? That's really weird. There is no dispelling of untruths surrounding dissociative identity disorder, and in fact she starts the book by saying that calling dissociative identity disorder, DID, split personality disorder, is incorrect, but then she just in November was using split personality disorder to market the further books in the series. You can't play it both ways. Which is it? You can't use stereotypes and inaccurate information to market and then write a disclaimer in the beginning of the book saying that's inaccurate and a stereotype. What are you doing? Everything is not yours to capitalize on. Mental illness and disorders, they don't work that way. You can't just pretend that you haven't done any harm just because it's fiction. The book says that there's a core personality to the love interest Dessen, and that this core personality was a result of a very traumatic incident that happened. If you want to go watch my review for the full in-depth notes about this book that I had, you can go watch it. It is linked down below. I want to read for you some of the comments that I got from people who actually do have DID and commented on my review of the book that I did last year.
I have DID, and that synopsis alone made my skin flay itself off. The worst part is that this book is very far from the only piece of media that portrays DID in such a horrifically ableist way. It's far more than just using the word split personality. Showing people with this disorder as dangerous and unhinged actually kills systems. People with DID, I'm appalled. I don't even have the strength to talk about the ED discussion and transphobia. As a person in an OSDD system, I was triggered by the description. Holy shit, this book is a trip like an LSD trip. Please get me out. As someone with a dissociative disorder, I hate this book. I hate that we're always some sort of manipulative, Machiavellian, dark villain, when in most cases, we usually end up being the victim. The concept of there being a good and bad personality is so frustrating because while yes, there are alters who tend to be more hostile or unpleasant than others, in the end, they are a way a child coped with a fucked up situation. I hate how people like me, people who have been suffering since usually a young age, are reduced to an intriguing plot twist, a chaotic villain, an unhinged serial killer that occasionally has moments of clarity, or an awfully conceptualized romance partner. We're not someone to be fixed by love or some sort of dangerous erotic thrill. Also, the sheer inaccuracy, probably not just with DID, but I'm focusing on that. The author, whose name I didn't bother to learn since she didn't bother to learn anything anything about DID in a book where it was the main part of the plot, could have used this book to battle stigma around the disorder. Instead, she reinforced it. People like her are the reason why, when I tell people about my condition, the questions are usually something like, so do you have any violent alters or something like that? Pieces of fiction like this that show us as dangerous or evil in a way that are so incredibly damaging, and usually they're barely accurate to real life. The truth is, the people most in danger due to systems are the systems themselves. The concept of a core personality is something so incredibly upsetting. I'm a host that took over when the body was about 13 because the host at the time was having a very, very difficult time even existing. She became dormant soon after that, and we haven't had any contact with her since. She was the closest to anything nearing a core personality, and that's just because she was one of the oldest and most active alters at the time. Due to this, despite having access to many but not all of her memories, I feel like an imposter. In DID narratives where the character strives to regain the original personality, while the other alters are seen as invaders, almost demons possessing someone, just go to solidify those awful feelings. The author could have used this book to battle the stigma against DID in the medical field and to prompt people to actually do research on the topic. For example, my ex-therapist did not believe me when I told her about the multiple people in my head and used rapid eye movement therapy, which is often used with traumatized people, but it can have very negative side effects. That, coupled with her strong pressure on my co-host, ended up with her actually bullying that alter out of existence, and I have no fucking clue where the fuck they went. Therapy with that lady ended after she let me run out of that office and wander the streets in a daze, almost getting hit by a car. Not even 10 minutes in, hearing that the main love interest has a DID OSDD is very upsetting as an OSDD IB system. We aren't something for people to romanticize. It's not something cool or quirky to say there's the mean, bad, crazy guy, and then there's the sweet, shy persona deep inside. We're literally created from terrible trauma, and our alters are formed to help us deal with that stuff. Romanticizing a protective alter who's a little angry and could possibly be deemed insane is so disrespectful and very distasteful. I can't wait to see how this author ruins DID OSDD even more. Sarcasm.
Moving on to other patients in the asylum that were written with just really problematic shit. Another patient is Chekis, who is the only black man in this book, who is a patient prisoner of the Emerald Lake Asylum. He's there for the murder of his wife and daughter, but he's nice to Skylena. He hasn't spoken out loud in years. Skylena is like, I can get him to speak, and of course she does, and he admits to her that he meant to kill his wife and daughter and he'd do it again. I do still love them, but I meant to kill them and I'd do it again. You meant to, I say with an unhinged jaw. Chekis tells me that the Lady Doll regimen had driven his wife and daughter mad. The obsession with starvation and sinless skin was all-consuming. It was like a virus in their brains chewing away at them. They became erratic in public, vomiting up small bits of food in the streets to show their self-control and keep their figures intact. The societal standards had ruined them, and all Chekis saw were shells of the people they once were. It was only a matter of moments before their behavior granted them their own rooms at the asylum. The Lady Doll regimen is the series of behaviors that you have to adhere to as a woman or in a girl in this society. Brandi is not saying that these behaviors are good, but she did write them into the book, and unfortunately she wrote them into the book not to have a conversation about them, but simply for shock value. The physical appearance of a woman is the gospel. They go by the Lady Doll regimen. It's a long nightly routine, hours of soaking in herbal water, a vigorous process to moisturize the skin and hair while also following the strictest dieting standards. Eat if you feel as though you might faint, she'd say, and topping it all off with their attire, dresses for every time of day. They also have fainting sofas, lots of places because women just pass out from not eating. And she says, I'm famished. I learned some time ago that women are praised for refusing meals as a sign they're keeping up with their Lady Doll regimen. So this is a regular thing in this society, and Brandi, as I said, does not use this to have any sort of like conversation about the topic. She just does it to like shock the reader, which feels pretty gross to those of us who struggle with ED. She says at the beginning of the book, the new version of the book, this didn't exist when I read the book. Disclaimer, this book contains explicit content and dark elements and may be considered offensive to some readers. You are correct. Check trigger warnings before reading. It is not intended for anyone under 18 years of age. Please store your files wisely where they cannot be accessed by underage readers. This is a dark dystopian society that is intended to be problematic. Why? Why is it intended to be problematic? Why? I would love for you to tell me. I would love for you to tell me why you think. Oh no. Nope. No. I would love for you to tell me why you think that it was appropriate for you to take real lived experiences of people and make them into a caricature and a joke and something for people to laugh at like a fucking animal in a zoo. I would love for you to tell me why you did that. Please note that this is a fictional world and in no way reflects on the author's personal beliefs. We will see the society grow and correct its moral compass over the series. But why do that at all? If you don't have the capability to even write DID rep without doing it wrong and marketing it in a way that you know is wrong, incorrect, and spreading factually inaccurate information about an actual disorder that people live with every day, why do you think that you have the right or even the capability to write a fucked up society that we will see grow and change? What makes you think that you have the right? What makes you think that you can even do that well? Especially when I catch you making merch named after the fucking eating disorder. You're capitalizing off of a fucking eating disorder. What is wrong with you? So again, the Lady Doll Regiment, going back to what I was talking about, is in part an eating disorder and in part like beauty rituals, but a lot of it is the eating, or the not eating rather. So instead of doing something normal to save his wife and daughter, Chekis, this man, smothered them, so brutally murdered them, and then left their dead naked bodies in public to shame the society. And in the end of the book, she frees Chekis from the along with another guy, Niall, which I'll talk about in a second. She frees this dude who brutally murdered his wife and daughter from the asylum. But that's not the only murder victim she freed though. There's this guy named Niall Cupid, he goes by Cupid, who would kidnap, he goes by Cupid because he believed that he could figure out people's soulmates, and he would kidnap people and force them to be together, but I also think that he was raping the women. But don't worry, because Brandi fan casted Sam Claflin as the man, and he's in later books, and he's quite funny. Everything's fine. Skylena emotionally manipulated Cupid upon meeting him into talking to her by taking on his treatment of being sprayed with freezing cold water. He's like, oh, why would you do that for me? And she's like, oh, because I want you to talk to me, and I didn't know how to do it other than manipulating you. So he tells her why he got to be the way he is, and this is where the violent transphobia comes in, so prepare yourself. Cupid was sex trafficked as a child. That's not all. One of the people who paid to assault him for a period of 3 days was a trans woman named Charlotte, who was also his biological parent. Skylena says inwardly, oh my god, the phantom images of Niles spending 3 days with a woman with male parts knock around on the inside of my brain. Her first instinct wasn't to be like, oh my god, Niles was a victim of childhood sex trafficking. Niles has been brutally sexually assaulted as a child. Niles was assaulted by his parent. None of that. Her first instinct is to say, I am disgusted by a trans woman's body. What the fuck? This perpetuates a false narrative that trans women are just men who want to pretend to be women in order to get into places where they can sexually assault women and children, and that's just fucking false. It's not true. It's blatantly false. Unfortunately, this was not the only case of childhood sexual assault in the book. And this is the one that really took a toll on me personally. The longer I sat with the book, the more harmed by it I became. And I think it's really fucking funny that Brandi's like, oh, I'm so thankful for all of you who have reached out and told me how this book has been so good for your mental health. While so many of us are sitting here like, hey, this was really fucked up, man. No, this took me an hour to put on. I'm not gonna cry it off. I am a parent, as many of you know. I am also a person with OCD. I have had OCD. The earliest I can remember is having compulsions around 8 years old. I deal with intrusive thoughts, and I also have ED, but that's, you know, this is about the OCD. What I'm about to relate to you is deeply disturbing, and it's the reason I personally couldn't continue with the series, because I was afraid that something about this would come up again. There is a patient with OCD. Again, I'm not going to read the excerpt because it was very triggering for me, but she was a patient at the Emerald Lake Asylum because she sodomized her own child with bleached objects because of her OCD, and then the child subsequently died. As a mom who struggles with OCD and had really rough postpartum depression and intrusive thoughts, especially after the births of both my kids, I can tell you that I did have a lot of intrusive thoughts about harming my own kids. As most people who struggle with this do, never acted on any of them. It's awful and I hate it. I hate being at war with my own brain. I don't harm my children, but But just like my brain tells me to tap certain objects, because I have OCD, my brain tells me to do other stuff, and I don't do it. I don't give in to very harmful, intrusive thoughts that I get. And it's not a statistical likelihood that any of us who deal with this will give in. My OCD, again, is tapping. Also feeling like I have to pick the right one of things. So if I'm at the grocery store and there's, you know, a box, like 2 boxes of the same thing, my brain makes me waste so much time because I sit there debating over which is the right one, and if I don't pick the right one, then something bad is going to happen. Or if I'm driving, my brain will be like, drive in the right lane rather than the left lane. You're in the left lane, something bad's going to happen, you need to get in the right lane. It's like none of this is true, but my brain tells me to do it, and unfortunately I do it because that's how obsessive compulsion works. It's very frustrating. I'm just going to have my friend Erin try to explain to you what the harm in this is for the rest of this, because I actually can't get it together. I'm so sorry.
It is extremely common in mothers with OCD to experience obsessions after having a child about doing harm to that child. There have been studies done on this, and there is no relationship between experiencing those symptoms and the probability of harming the child. They are anxieties, just like worrying that you're secretly a bad person. But discussion of the experience of mothers with OCD is extraordinarily stigmatized. And whilst there is no relationship between those symptoms and harm to child, there are plenty of instances of mothers being institutionalized by admitting to a therapist that they're experiencing these symptoms. And so to have representation in a book where a mother gets institutionalized for harming her child because she has OCD is awful.
So when this book came out, people were rightfully upset about the trans rep in it, amongst other obvious, very harmful things. As you can see, I had a very strong reaction to the ED rep and the OCD rep. The violent transphobia contained within this book was very upsetting, so many in the book community started to speak out about it. I'm not sure what exactly the inciting incident was. It's very hard because there were so many TikToks about this, but a lot of things have been deleted, and it's a lot of he said, she said, so I don't know exactly what started this. I tried to find it, and I'm sorry I can't, but from what I understand, the story that happened is that a beta reader for Brandi either did not turn in her beta reading notes on time or did, and Brandi ignored them. I don't know which one of those is true. I heard also that the same beta reader sent out the e-arc of this book, a unfinished copy, and then I also heard that it wasn't the same beta reader. I don't know who sent out what. I also heard that this beta reader tried to give Brandi feedback about the transphobia. I heard that she didn't. I don't know what is what, but what happened is that all of this came to a head because people were talking about it, and Brandi sort of like stepped away from TikTok for a little bit. What really frustrates me is that every time a TikTok author fucks up, they come back on with their makeup-free apology, but not really to apologize, but to set the record straight, because they feel like they didn't do anything wrong, and they're like, let me say my piece. Not really apologize, but say my piece. And you know that they're not really apologizing, because when people come to their comments and say, you didn't do anything wrong, they're like, thank you, I know.
Hi everyone, I wanted to address all of the concerns about the triggering content in my debut novel, The Pawn and the Puppet. Thank you so much to everybody who is willing to be patient with me while I take some time to process everything. First of all, I wanted to apologize to everyone who was negatively affected and hurt by the traumatic scene regarding a transgender woman. I swear, harming a community was never my intention, and I am deeply ashamed that it did. I also regret not being even more thorough with my trigger warnings. That was a naive, short-sighted error of mine. I have been spending time with sensitivity readers who are helping me pick apart offensive content in book 1 as well as the rest of the series. And this is just to make sure that this never, ever happens again. A revised version of this book will be up very soon, as well as a new list of trigger warnings that are far more specific. I do understand that many people believe that these mistakes are a reflection of my own personal beliefs, and I can assure you that they are not. at all. I am an advocate of the LGBTQ community as well as a liberal with all of the according views. I truly hope that you can forgive this short-sightedness, this complete arrogance, as I am always eager to learn and be educated about all diversities and all communities. Now, this is my debut novel, so at the very least, I hope that this can be an example for other authors that are coming forward to make sure no one ever makes these mistakes again. However, there is also a very problematic mistruth that is circulating that I do need to address in a part 2. At this time, there is a beta reader who is spreading a lot of incorrect information that I do wish you will give me the chance to clear up. Beta reader feedback is vital, and it was so important to the process of creating the pawn and the puppet. When I did choose beta readers, I sent out an email with guidelines for my beta readers to make sure that we met the appropriate deadlines before I had to send the manuscript to editors and format designers. I received daily updates and feedback from all of the readers except one beta reader. Now, after receiving all this feedback, I went on to make necessary changes and did have to immediately send in my manuscript to my editor. This is before I eventually did hear back from that beta reader after having to reach out to them. Now, her only message to me was asking if we could get on a call or she could send me notes about the psychological aspects of the book. Now, at this time, like I said, I did have to send off the manuscript and get the ball rolling because we were on very, very tight deadlines. And like I said, I did not hear back from this beta reader. I assumed that she was no longer reading the manuscript. Now, this reader never told me that she found any offensive content or misrepresentation in the book. All she said was discuss psychological aspects. I was never given any notes or feedback. That is something that is falsely being spread around Book Talk at this time. Now, if I was given any notes or feedback from this beta reader, then I would have been grateful for the time and opportunity to fix these issues. I have also been informed that this beta reader is sending out multiple free copies of the beta reading manuscript, which is so heartbreaking to hear. Now, the only time that the triggering content was brought to my attention was by another book talker who was given the copy just a few days early from release because we were going to do a podcast discussing the book. Now, as soon as this individual brought their concerns to me, I immediately reached out to thank them for bringing this to my attention and even asked their advice on how to fix it and how to properly address it. Once I got their feedback, I did go ahead and make a post on Instagram to address the misrepresentation and the theme of the dystopian world as it is problematic. I also did let this person know that I will be fixing these issues in future revisions. However, this did all happen 3 days before the book was officially released on April 1st. 3 days before publication, the books are already printed and packed and ready to release. I do hope that some will be able to show grace in areas where I plan to show growth. Once again, I do hope that you can forgive my short-sightedness and allow me to be educated and learn from my mistakes and grow as an author, and also set an example for other authors to make sure no other debut authors make this mistake again.
So she ended her apology by saying, there's some misinformation though, and I want to clear it up. It's like, yes, let's make this about you. And then they just go on to commit this harm again and again, which in my opinion, Brandi did and does. Despite Brandi saying that she's an ally to the LGBT community, her actions say otherwise. I also want to point out that lumping in LGBT altogether when you've offended one party is really interesting, because you can be a LGBT ally and be a raging transphobe. So like, I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Like, you're an ally, but you wrote a trans woman assaulting her son. Hello? On top of that, people in the queer community who were like not trans, who were just queer folks, were like, I accept Brandi's apology, but it's not yours to accept. You're not trans. What? That's like if I slap my husband in the face and then I tell you about it and you're like, oh, I accept your apology. It's not yours. He's the one who has to accept. I slapped him, not you. By the way, Brandi has not apologized for the violent OCD rep or the ED rep, and if she does, I don't accept. I simply do not. You don't get to cash in on other people this much to this degree and then expect me to accept your apology. I do not accept. So it wasn't other people's apology to accept, and a trans person who was affected by this book was my friend Reese from Reese Reads, and he and her did have a conversation because he was outspoken about the harm that this had done, and Brandi ended up contacting him, and I will read you the screenshots.
Hey Reese, I hope you don't mind my reaching out to you. I just wanted to let you know I don't consider any of your content hateful or harassing. My recent video was referring to the messages I received, mainly people asking me to unalive myself or threats to find where I live. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that your passion to educate is appreciated on so many levels. It was never harassing. I'm so sorry if I made you think otherwise. If you have any questions, I'd love to talk to you. I'm sorry it's taken me a while to extend this branch. I've posted but had someone monitor everything else for my mental health. Reese said, I've been vocal about this since April. I understand mental health is crucial, but you don't even acknowledge what I go through, what other trans people go through, what people with mental illnesses go through, and what disabled people go through. You have said you are cisgender and straight before, unless it has changed, and I apologize if it has. In terms of society, that is the most privileged identity to have. You didn't say the right words in your video. You come off as trying to be the victim when you aren't. You decided to publish the book when you knew minorities would disagree with it. Trying to pull the victim card here isn't going to work with me and other minorities who are hurt by the stereotypes used. I've laid out everything here on Instagram with my posts and on TikTok with my videos on how the transphobia is using stereotypes that I deal with almost daily. Other people have made posts about the stereotypes of mental illness and how these are problematic. If you wanted to listen and learn, you would have watched the videos in April. You're right, I should have watched the videos, said Brandi. Unfortunately, the ones I saw at first were tearing down my character, saying I was sick, disturbed, and a bad person. It was too much for me to cope with, and I became extremely suicidal. My mother is the one that kept watching and kept my phone. Once again, you're right. I didn't understand the struggles the transgender community has to go through. That is my fault. That is a shame I have to carry for not being educated, and I am so sorry it harmed you and others. I was only speaking on the terror I received, as that should be brought to light as well. Most don't realize the messages that come from a cancellation. I'm just gonna pause here to say that Brandi was not canceled. I don't believe that cancellation is a thing for the most part. I think that cancellation is used when anyone receives any sort of backlash and people as a whole try to remove themselves from supporting a person. But you are not canceled. You are not a TV show. You are not removed from life or from society as a whole. People not willing to support you via, social media posts or monetarily is not a cancellation. It is a consequence of your own actions. People do not have to associate with you. You are not entitled to other people's time or attention or money. Being removed is not a cancellation, and I'm very tired of hearing people say that it is a cancellation. I'm once again going to refer to Mari from My Name is Marina's made a great thread on this back in 2019 because we have been having this conversation for literally years. So I'm going to refer you to these tweets and I will read them. I have read them in a different video and I'm gonna read them again. This inherently frames cancel culture as negative or toxic, primarily because cancel culture robs some people of what they think they are owed, the forgiveness or time or money or attention of those whom they have harmed. It sits wrong with me, especially if we don't acknowledge that cancel culture was born from Black Twitter. Being canceled meant that Black people, Black women especially, have exited the space. They are protecting themselves and their resources by withdrawing support. I think it's telling that we often center the conversation on how others react to harm rather than correcting harm, apologizing, moving on, and dealing with the fact that your mistakes might mean that you may not be welcome into spaces you previously felt entitled to enter. Many times people who cause harm demand space to correct their behavior and demand the emotional labor of those who they have harmed. On top of the harm, they demand niceness. What do we base this idea that cancel culture is toxic on anyway? So many times people and things that were canceled keep on keeping on, like Brandi, who has since published 2 more books. Anyways, they still walk away with support, just less. I mean, in a lot of cases, hopefully less. I think what people are trying to rally against are boundaries. If you get canceled, people, often marginalized people, are setting up boundaries. That is the opposite of toxic behavior. That is getting the final say in how I spend my resources. This is cancel culture. My right to set this boundary and warn others who might be hurt by your behavior or product. My right to owe those who harm me nothing, not space, not labor, not forgiveness, not kindness. I can extend those, but I don't have to. Find your trusted voices and feel free to listen to marginalized people when they say something is harmful. We belong to a community of reviewers, for Christ's sake. This is it. This is the whole thing, listening to others who have consumed something you may not have. You can decide to judge for yourself. Those are your resources, but do not frame it as the superior choice. If you want to put your time and dollars towards something a group of people have called racist or homophobic or transphobic or ableist, consider doing it quietly. Back to the text, the DMs between Brandi and Reese. But yeah, I just want to point out that you were not canceled because people withdrew support from you after you harmed a community is not a cancellation. You are not a TV show. Moving on. Most don't realize the messages that come from a cancellation. I'm sorry, it doesn't mean much, but I'm sorry again. I wish I had the right words to express that. Reese says, my community is not the only one harmed. If you want to truly apologize to everyone, stop liking transphobic comments and issue apologies to creators like Aaron with Book on TikTok for the OCD misrepresentation. I don't know if Aaron wants an apology from Brandi on the OCD rep, but I don't. I don't want it. I don't accept. And all I want from Brandi is to do better on her own time. But any apology is not accepted because it was too painful. And that's my right as a person who was harmed by such a vile representation of my mental illness. As a cis person, you probably don't realize it, but calling us the trans rights activists is belittling us. I've seen the comment via a screenshot. Calling us TRAs makes it seem like our rights aren't worth fighting for. We're human just like cis people. What makes our lives less valuable? Nothing. I called the rep in my first video vile and disgusting because it is. Using a trans character to be a pedophile when that rhetoric is used in bathroom debates, and Reese didn't mention this here, but it's also being used to remove books with trans rep from schools and libraries currently in the United States, is wrong. Just like using a gay character in that same sense is wrong because that rhetoric is used by straight people, mainly religious ones at that. Overall, if you didn't want this backlash from your most recent video, would have helped to clarify you meant death threats because those should not be taken lightly, and I agree with Reese on that. Using wording like you did is vague, and of course people will think you're talking about videos like mine that called out the problematic rep. I think that's so important that Reese said that because he is absolutely right. It could have been avoided by stating you meant the death threats in your inbox. Thank you so much for informing. I'm not watching the comments or have seen the TRA's one, but I'll take care of it immediately and clarifying as well. You are human, your life is valuable, and you have a wonderful heart for speaking up. I'll continue to educate myself and listen to my reps on these subjects. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me. Reese said, you did like the trans rights activist comment. You probably didn't realize it, but it's there and it says liked by creator. I believe that this was in her TikTok comments regarding her apology. But as a creator and an author who has people engaging with your content, people giving you monetary support, you should be listening to multiple voices. In practice and actions, you haven't really done that. Actions are currently speaking louder than words. I agree. I absolutely agree. Your social media and marketing have shown you aren't taking criticisms for what they are. Helpful suggestions to make your work not harmful or not as harmful. You aren't addressing the criticisms. It's like you're turning a blind eye to anyone who criticizes your book. You also don't want to address the internalized homophobia and transphobia that showed in your book. If you do wish to change that, reflect internally and issue a true, sincere apology. Stop making the conversation about yourself and instead think about the minorities that were hurt. Don't just think about me and the trans community, think about others. Brandi said, I understand. Thank you so much for your insight and truth. And that was the end of the conversation.
Brandi calls herself an ally and a liberal with all the according views. I don't know what the fuck that means because J.K. Rowling is also a liberal, like politically, and she's also outspokenly and violently transphobic. There are no according views to being a liberal. Transphobia is everywhere and we have to actively work against it, not capitalize off of it, which Brandi went on to do, because despite saying, I'll fix it, she then sold those copies with the Transphobia on her website, signed copies of that. Didn't just pull them like she should have. So which is it? Is it that you did something wrong and you're going to fix it, or that you still feel like you wrote something that is worth profiting off of? Which is it? The right thing would have been to not circulate those books anymore and circulate the fixed copies. Of course, there was an article that came out that I will read to you, and it said that people were upset about the trigger warnings in the book not being enough, which is not the conversation that we were having.
Woke TikTok mob forces horror author to change published debut novel over transgender pedophile character because she failed to mention transphobia for some reason, end quote, in lengthy list of trigger warnings printed at start of book. No, that's not it. Anyway, and then it has the points that the author's trying to make, and the author of this article, and the author is Gina Martinez, and this was published April 21st, 2022. A woke TikTok mob forced, yes, at gunpoint, who knows, doesn't elaborate, a young adult fiction author to change her, young adult, no, that's not true. You don't even have this accurate, because it clearly says at the beginning of the book, not for people under 18, but all right. To change her published debut novel after she failed to provide a trigger warning regarding a transgender pedophile character. What does this even lead to? Why is this? Oh, of course. Yes, it leads to transphobia. What a shock. Author Brandi Szeker is facing intense backlash from Book Talk, the sub-community on the app TikTok focused on books and literature, over her only novel at the time, The Pawn and the Puppet, over claims it is transphobic. Readers were outraged by a transgender character called Charlotte, who pays to hire a child sex slave who turns out to be her own son. Well, at least they didn't misgender Charlotte. The book, published this April by Red Oak Publishing LLC, was written by Szeker, a popular Book Talk content creator herself, and is listed as an adult dystopian romance set in an asylum. The book, intended for readers ages 18 and older, contains a lengthy trigger warning which includes gratuitous violence, depression, suicide, torture, blah, 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 blah. But there was no mention of transphobia, and the woke mob were quick to attack. Szeker has since posted a groveling apology and says the book will be revised to remove the offensive content. She also plans to announce to work with sensitivity readers, woke publishing house staff employed to remove supposedly offensive content from books for the remaining books in the series. Critics have hit back at the mob online, claiming that they have no right to curtail Szeker's imagination when creating fictional characters. The book remains very highly rated, with an average score of 4.2 out of 5 among close 3,000 reviews on Goodreads, suggesting Szeker may have kowtowed. I don't even know what this word means, to be honest. Too easily to we have to look it up. We always have to look it up because I just don't have to look it up. I don't always know what words mean. Try to gain favor by cringing or flattering. Synonyms: bootlick. Alright. The book has rubbed some readers and book talkers the wrong way over the lack of trigger warnings for things such as grooming of minors, racism, and incest, as well as the supposed transphobic representation of a trans character named Charlotte. Book talker Book Drunk in Love posted a TikTok where she calls the book's characterization of Charlotte, who in the book engages in pedophilia with her own child, harmful. The only characterization we have of a trans woman in this book is someone who purchases their own child, has sex with their own child, and then gives them money, she says. She took issue with the fact that Charlotte, who is written as a woman with male private parts, has a negative storyline. Instead, she was worried about how it would be perceived considering the current conversation surrounding trans issues. I think that this is extremely harmful, especially since they're the only person in the entire book that is in the LGBTQ community, especially with the current climate going on against trans people. In response to the backlash, Szeker posted a series of TikToks profusely apologizing for the characterization of Charlotte. Oh, nice, you didn't even spell Charlotte right. And lack of trigger warnings. Szeker said it was never her intention to offend the trans community, and that she would be amending the book and adding a more specific trigger warning. And then they quote Brandi's apology video, which I will play, or have played.
It was really interesting watching somebody misrepresent what the actual conversation was surrounding this book. But this article was not the only place that misinformation was spread, because Brandi came back to TikTok eventually and started spreading misinformation herself.
Recently, she just posted that she received hate and backlash from her book because she's a self-published author.
And I saw the true dark and scary side of being an author on TikTok. Due to my own mistakes from publishing by myself for the first time, I received hate, harassment.
Woo, okay, waves and smiles nervously. I'm so happy that I've been able to continue my dream of being an author. I didn't realize how hard it was going to be, and no, I'm not referring to the writing, editing, marketing, business, etc. No, I'm referencing the part that fucking hurts, the part where complete strangers that don't know me call me names, judge me viciously for writing about dark themes in detail. Ma'am, I want you to look me in the fucking face and explain to me why you think that my mental illnesses are yours to capitalize off of when you do it so harmfully. I want you to explain it to me. I'm not bullying you. I'm asking you a fucking question. Please tell me, why do you think that that's okay? Because you labeled it dark romance? Are you kidding? You're not the fucking victim here. The bullying, the kind that you thought ends in high school. You know what's cute is I got bullied viciously for my OCD. You know how many fucking people told me to stop tapping? It sucks. It sucks. In Christianity, they tell you that it's a fucking demon. And you think you can write about it? The kind that made me question if it was worth living. You fucking, oh my God. Do you know what it was like having OCD when my son was in the NICU? Do you know what that was like? Every single thing that I would do, I would sit there and be like, if I tap, if I do this, if I do that, I can bring him home today. He'll be fine and I can bring him home. And then I would think that I failed and I would drive home and want to run my car off the fucking overpass because I failed. And you think you can write about that? Okay, the bullying, the kind that you thought ends in high school, the kind that made me question if it was worth living, the kind that made me cower in a corner while my mom kept an eye on the hateful videos and gave me the good news when there wasn't any, the kind that left me feeling worthless and friendless when close internet friends abandoned me. Gee, I wonder who. That kind. I'm sure at some point you met your own version of the people that hate me the most, but have you met hundreds or even thousands of them? It cuts so deep you don't have anything to compare it to. You fucked up. You did something so awful and people were hurt by it. I can't believe this. It cuts so deep, blah, blah, blah. But here I am dusting myself off, hugging my mama for holding me during the worst of it, and publishing my second fucking book because I was raised by a windowed mother who taught me to be strong and lift my chin in the face of a bully. I just find this so fucking ironic because of me sitting here and being so fucking traumatized by her book. I find this so fucking ironic. The woman that taught me I don't need a man to succeed, that in your darkest moments I should choose to love and forgive. So despite all the craziness that has come in waves since the publication of my first book, help me stand higher and the bestseller the shit out of The Master and the Marionette. I will not be doing that. For myself and for the trans people that Brandi harmed and for everybody else with an ED, I will not be doing that because it's not deserved. It's just fucking not. I mean, like, even from a fucking craft standpoint, the book's bad. The book's bad. It's not good. It's not good. Brandi may or may not have received harassment. I don't know. I haven't seen it. I can't tell you. Probably. I mean, when you get this much internet traction, you're bound to get some. I mean, even I've gotten death threats from angry men because I said I didn't want to read Steven Erikson. What are you gonna do? I have seen people make fun of her looks, the way that she does her makeup in particular, and I would ask that y'all keep that out of my comments. It's stupid, so we're not gonna do that here. I do think it is fucked up if she was harassed. But I hope she doesn't think that getting a bunch of messages saying, hey, your book really fucking hurt me was harassment. That's a consequence for writing harmful mental illness rep. You're going to hear from readers who you hurt. They paid for your book and then they found in it that they were depicted in a really disgusting way. If she was harassed and, you know, made fun of, then that sucks and I'm sorry and that shouldn't have happened. But neither should her book. Like, both of those things can be true at once. Calling herself an ally to the trans community, not to mention she just fucked my shit up by having the worst possible OCD rep that I have ever come across in my entire fucking life. And I've read Christian fiction about mental illness. So that's fucking saying something. And she thinks it's okay because she labeled her shit dark romance. You weren't bullied because you wrote dark romance. You were told, hey, this is awful. She said in her trigger warnings that she is romanticizing mental illness as if it covers the harm she had done. What's wrong with you? I had a lot of people talking about this in my feed and I didn't see any harassment. What I did see, not saying there wasn't any, but what I saw was people coming out in droves, not because they were harassing her for being a self-published author. Nobody harassed her for that. If anybody harassed her, it wasn't for that. That's a bold-faced lie. People were rightfully speaking out about the egregious and horrible and harmful content in her book. But she took it personally because she thought that she deserved like all of this like accolades and attention. And when people said, hey, you stereotyped me to get to where you are, that's shitty, she's like, that hurts my feelings. What the fuck? I don't care. Brandi just cares about Brandi and not other people. It's abundantly clear. clear. Further proof of this is, again, the reason that I was like finally pushed to even make this video was I just met my breaking point with this woman. As you know, the Lady Doll regimen is the name of the eating disorder in the book. If she wants to make merch off of her book, there's 100,000 different things that she can do. But to make consumable, edible merch, tea, which tea of all fucking things, the thing that a lot of us who struggle with anorexia use to keep ourselves from eating, what were you thinking? To make tea and name it the Lady Doll regimen tea? You named a tea after your eating disorder and then you sold it? What's wrong with you? This is worse than her being friends with Nyla Kay, who is writing pedophilic incest books and then getting mad when Amazon doesn't want to sell them. And Dana Isley, you're friends with Nyla Kay and Dana Isley on Facebook. Yikes, that's rough. You're also saying things like, if you're gonna 1-star my book, write it in your diary, and then saying it's a joke. What's the punchline? Go on, what's the punchline? Oh wait, but those things are not nearly as bad as the fact that you named your edible merch after the eating disorder that you created. What's wrong with you? You know what it's like to have an eating disorder? It's every time that you eat with someone else, you're not just having a one-on-one conversation. You're having 2 conversations at once. Because you're having a conversation with the person you're eating dinner with, and you're fighting with your own brain at the same time because you're eating and your brain doesn't want you to eat. And that sucks. And the fact that you would make tea called the Lady Doll regimen, like you have to be so unaware. Truly, what's wrong with you? I can't imagine anybody that's more self-absorbed and self-focused and can't see that that's a problem. And she did put out like a call for sensitivity readers saying, this is your opportunity to read The Master and the Marionette before everyone else. Let me give you some advice for fellow authors out there. This is not how you find sensitivity readers. You need to do some research and find one that does sensitivity reading for the particular thing that you need a sensitivity read for. And like one person cannot possibly cover all of the things that she is writing about and doing wrong. You would need a person to do the DID rep, the ED rep, the OCD. If you want to get it right, you're going to have to hire a whole lot of people, and you don't want to get it right. So maybe you shouldn't be writing about it, because maybe we who live with those things are worth getting it right for and not yours to capitalize off of doing it wrong. And the fact that you're like, you get to read my book before everybody else. No, they're not lucky to read your book. You're lucky people are willing to work with you, and you better pay them. Pay them for their time. If you've noticed, the theme of this story is underrepresented voices, the symbolism of how this dark society treats people they don't understand, and the progression to change that, a direct light on the modern world. Having read your book, I disagree. I think that you like to write shocking things for shock value to make people go, oh my god. That's it. That's the only conversation you're able to have. Just recently, she said the dark romance category is not easy to stay in. It's frowned upon by a big portion of the book community. It can force us to face past trauma, bad experiences, and pivotal points in our mental health journeys. You're an author. You wrote what? Why? Journeys? What? Is this the store at the mall? Let's normalize being kind and accepting of the dark romance community, even if it's not your cup of tea, even if you don't understand it. I can't fucking believe you. I can't fucking believe that you said that. This by far might be the most self-absorbed author I've ever covered. It is, actually. This is worse than J. Kristoff. This is more self-absorption than fucking J. Kristoff. That's saying something. Dark romance authors, thank you for writing the bold and the dark and not being afraid to write hard topics. Here are some things I've learned from writing in this genre that I can share. Not only should you stay away from reviews, wow, we finally agree on something. My god, I thought it would never happen. But try to avoid certain algorithms on Book Talk that hate on dark romance books. You never know when yours will pop up in a negative way. Here's the difference. There are people who write dark romance, and then there are people who write bad books with bad rep of actual lived experience in them. You're the latter. And if you're encouraging the latter, yeah, y'all might want to block me. I mean, Brandi already blocked me, even though I've never said anything to her. So have friends and family screenshot and send you the good reviews. It's nice to have that extra boost. That pat on the back tells you your books are reaching the right people. Okay, I both agree and disagree with this. I think that you should, as an author, not read reviews, but have your friends and family send you the good reviews. But I think that they should send you the good reviews that have constructive criticism in them, but also say what they like. Because if they're just blowing smoke up your ass and saying, I love this book, oh my god, it was so good. Not that that isn't a valid review, it's just not a valid review for you. That person wrote that for like their friends and shit. That's just gonna make you think that you're not doing anything wrong and don't need to change anything. anything. And it's not going to encourage you to hire sensitivity readers who actually know what they're doing, or beta readers. It's not going to encourage you to hire them at all because you don't think that they are worth the money. If social media is becoming too much for your mental health, hand over your accounts to a trusted fan or friendly... Here it goes, the dyslexia, fun. If social media is becoming too much for your mental health, hand your accounts over to a trusted family. I can't do it. I can't fucking read it. To monitor your comments and messages if you don't already have a PA. You have a PA and you're fucking up this often? Jesus Christ. Take a break from writing to do something that you love. You don't love writing? I'm not saying that like... It's just weird. Like, that was just a weird sentence. Like, it's fine to, like, love other things. That was just a weird sentence. To get away from this bookish world and enjoy real life. Again, this is like Susan Meachin all over again. You know that the book world is still part of the real world. Like, what are we even saying? If your anxiety is at an all-time high, try blending aloe and water together, then pouring it in ice pops. Rub them over your face every morning. Oh, yeah, maybe aloe is exactly what I needed when all the anxiety attacks happened after I read Brandi's first book. Thanks, Brandi. That's so helpful. Or you could have just not written garbage. Thank you to everyone who's kind and understanding to authors. This is a hard job. Sometimes it doesn't feel worth it, but seeing your kind words and sweet messages helps so much. I'm sure it does help to only read the good stuff and not really listen to constructive criticism from people you are actively writing about and harming. In 2022, I published my first 3 books, hit the #1 Barnes & Noble bestseller list for fantasy sci-fi. Her book is neither fantasy nor sci-fi. Make that make sense. Romance, and #1 on Amazon's bestseller for dystopian fiction. I learned that above all else, to make the sensitivity reading a #1 priority no matter the genre. There's always something we're not educated on. I learned to grow thicker skin because even though they say stay out of your own books reviews, people now post videos everywhere. It's impossible not to scroll, see a bad comment, see a post about me or my books. I don't think that is impossible. I think it's hard. I think you have to, cater you have to make your content. You have to make your shit so that it doesn't come up. I don't think it's impossible. I learned that publishing isn't the magical road I thought it would be. It's terrifying. It's constantly wondering who you're going to offend. It's paranoia of being canceled. It's questioning if living the dream of being an author is even worth it. But I've also learned that people can be so fucking kind and forgiving, so loving and supportive, filling up my inbox with sweet words. God, I wish that you filled up your book with good words. I wish that had happened. I've learned that although this has been hard on my mental health, my God, same. My books help people with others with their mental health. Wow, opposite for me. Your book was traumatizing for me. Thank you. People with DID. Which people with DID? I would love for someone with DID to come forward. Eating disorders. Again, I just want to call your attention to your own merch. Anxiety, PTSD, depression. I don't have PTSD that I know of. I do have depression, and your book did not help me with that, so that's interesting. I've gotten messages about my book helping you cope, giving you friends when you didn't have any, giving you hope for love, family, recovering from your trauma. That makes it so worth it. If you're still reading at this point, please know I'm deeply sorry for the mistakes I've made this year, but I appreciate the grace and acceptance. I don't believe you because you continue to capitalize off of the eating disorder merch and the books with the transphobia in it, and then you are like, I'm so afraid of being canceled, and you're not listening to those of us who did the work to read these things for you from our perspective and give you the feedback from the perspective of somebody living with those issues. You were waiting for somebody who is both already a fan of you and can sensitivity read to do that work for you for free. What the fuck? Merry Christmas to all my pawns and puppets, and to those of you that have I Hate Brandi accounts on TikTok, Merry Christmas to you too. Say hi to the first ghost when they arrive at midnight. Ma'am, this is so stupid. Oh, here's some fun. FAQs about the Pawn and the Puppet. Is this a why choose romance? People understandably took issues with the term reverse harem, so we've started using why choose in the romance community. So she's saying, and why choose is when a woman has several men love interests. So she's saying that is the, she's asking, is this one of those, a why choose romance? And she says, yes, in a way, but in a unique way. The men are all alters of the main main character who's a guy. So you think that because a person has DID that your book is, that they are polyamorous? I don't think that's how that works. I'm putting it all out there. I will never stop chasing my dreams. I work this hard for my family despite those who put so much effort into ruining my career and tanking my dream. They can do their worst, but I will always do my best. It's interesting that she's not being specific when I haven't seen anybody try to ruin her career. What I've been seeing is backlash, understandable backlash from all of the harmful shit within her books. If people are trying to ruin her career, then show me. I don't know what you're talking about. All I'm seeing is my own feed, which which has people who are saying, hey, I have ED, I have OCD, I am a trans person, and this book is writing inaccurate and dangerous information about my lived experience. Anyway, that's it. That's all. That's all of it for now. I'm sure there will be more. It will never stop. These TikTok authors are relentless. I wish that the TikTok authors would slow down. That's my wish. I wish that they would slow down and be like, how can I make sure that this thing that I'm really passionate about, that I am doing the right thing here, and ask around and hire sensitivity readers and make sure that you're not perpetuating misinformation and stereotypes around lived experiences that are not your own, ones that actively harm people. Okay. Anyway, well, I'm exhausted. I was going to film 4 videos today, and now I'm thinking I'm going to film no more because I'm so tired. That was a lot. That was the story of Brandi Szeker. If you have continued on with the series, can you let me know if it got any better? I assume not, but let me know if it did. I mean, there's always hope, right? There's always hope that they do improve and hone their craft and stuff, but it just seemed to me that there wasn't much of a plot, and I couldn't see a trajectory where it would have actually like picked up a plot and gone somewhere satisfying with it as a person who really likes plot in books. So let me know. And that's it. Okay. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.
Before I go, I have to say thank you for being a friend to my Potato Starch Marxist patrons, and those are Abby, Aiden, Alicia, Allison, Amanda, Andy, Anita, Artie the Ninth, Ava, BB, Bethann, Ray, Caitlin, Carlin, Catherine, Kathy, Celia, Cheyenne, Chris, CJ, Corwin, Corey, Darren, Deandra, Deborah, Diet Goth, Dorian, Douglas, Ebby, Eden, Elise, Elia, Emily, Faith, Grace, Gracie, Haley, Hannah C, Hannah T, Helen, Horror Goose, India Inks, JT, Jen with 2 N's, Jillian, Joni, Jules, Kaylee, Kate, Catherine, Katya, Keely, Kelsey, Kylie, Laura, Lauren B, Library of Scars, Liz Cardigan, Martin, Maddie, Marcella, Marquita, Malara, Mary, Miriam, Model RK300, Moog, Morgan R, Moth, MXDS, James, Nat, Never, Nicole R, Nicole T, Nyan Binary, Paige E, Paige P, Peggy Lou, Pixel Stars, Pure Raytheon, Rachel B, Rachel S, Rachel who's my friend on Twitter, Reba, Ren, Robin, Rowan, Samantha, Sarah, Scarlett, Shanae, Shannon, Sheena K, Sean, Stephen, Talia, Ursula, Valentine, Winter, Writer A, and Yesenia. Thank you all so much for being a friend.